Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Seetal and you're watching Seetal MD. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to sew this high neck collar top. I didn't really finish the rest of the top because the purpose of this video is just to show you how I sew the high neck collar. If you're new to my channel, I would love for you to subscribe to my channel, and to all my other viewers that have come back, thank you so much for being here with me. Although I am very inconsistent with videos, and I promise to try and be more consistent. Without wasting any more time, let's just get on with the video. So we start by drawing a square of 3 inches each way. This 3 inches represents the area or the circumference of your neck divided by 2. And then from the midpoint of your blouse or the midpoint of your top, you go out half of your shoulder length, and from that point you go down about an inch. This is to get your shoulder slope. Once you've marked your shoulder slope, I marked out about 2 inches from the 3-inch point because I wanted my my shoulder strap to be about 2 inches wide, and after sewing, I guess I'll leave some ease there. And from the mark where I put from my shoulder line, I went down to find my upper bust line, and then from there I got my upper bust circumference divided by 4 plus some ease to get how wide my upper bust should be. That's basically where my armhole sits, right? And from there I drew a curve to shape the armhole. And then from the top of my shoulder, I found the point where my apex lies, or my bust line, and from there I got my bust circumference divided by 4 plus some ease. And then from there, from the shoulder, I went down to my waist divided by 4 plus some ease. I drew some darts in here, but you don't necessarily have to do darts, but if you wanted to do darts for your top, you can. I did not actually use the darts in the end. I actually just eliminated the darts, and instead of having the shape of the blouse giving way for the dart, I just removed the darts completely and then just drew a straight line from the bust going all the way up to my armhole. And then now for the neck hole, you draw about 2 inch, go up 2 inches from the shoulder point, or as high or as low as you want for your neck point. And then the point where the shoulder meets the top of your neck, right? You kind of have to do a little curve there, and that entire line from this point where the shoulder is to the end point where your neck is, right? This line here has to be the exact same length as where that shoulder point meets your front neck, the tip of your front neck on the side, right? Because if it's not the same, then when you go to sew the front and back pieces together at the shoulder line, they will not meet together. So draw the shoulder line, the front neck, just as I'm showing you here. Go as deep as you want. My depth, I went 8 inches. You can go deeper if you want. And then just make sure to measure and to see that the point where the front neck meets, the end of the front neck, meets the shoulder point is the same for the back and the front. And then I went ahead and finished off the pattern with some ease on the sides of my blouse. I left a lot of ease on the bottom and the sides just in case, I grew bigger, but you don't need much ease on the armhole and the shoulders as well as the neck. I left about half an inch. Do you. Cut your pieces out on the fold, making sure that you cut your neck different for the front and the back, and as well as the armhole, and definitely make sure that you leave the correct ease on the armhole, the neck, and the sides of the top, right? And then go ahead and cut it on the fabric. Because this is a fitted top, you need to remember to leave some ease in the center of your back paper pattern, because you'll need to leave place to sew the zipper. Make sure to transfer the patterns of or the markings of the darts. I did leave the markings of the darts here, but in the end when I ended up sewing, I omitted the darts completely and just cut that entire, from the bust, the waistline all the way to my armhole, all the way straight. I just stitched it all the way straight. It was fine. I fit in it just perfectly fine. I also cut pieces of lightweight interfacing for the neck piece, just the top of the neck piece, just so that it gives it a bit of a structure after sewing. I also cut lining for my top because my top has a very finicky inside because it's made out of brocade. And after I finished iron-on interfacing, I went ahead and sewed the front and back bodice pieces together right side facing at the shoulders, and I did this for both the lining and the outer fabric, and then I cut away the excess before moving on to the next step where I placed both the lining and tops right sides facing each other and then sewed them together at the neck to make the neck piece. But what I didn't realize here was that I was actually sewing my top, the fabric to the lining, right sides to wrong side, so not right side facing each other, which meant that after I sewn it and then I turned it over, I realized that my lining would be, the wrong side of the lining would be facing my body, which I didn't want. So I ended up seam ripping that entire part and doing it all over again. Yep, this is when I realized I sewed the right side of my lining to the wrong side of my fabric. So I had to seam rip that, there's no point fighting it, just make peace with your seam ripper and just start ripping that seam. Put some podcasts on, it's a great time to relax actually. So after getting it right and sewing my lining and my fabric piece right sides together at the neck and turning it over, I gave it a good iron, and then I did an understitch. Now the understitch is basically stitching the excess seam, whatever little that you haven't cut off or nicked off, because before turning over you kind of have to nick off the lining, the excess seam a little bit so that it would turn over nicely. Now I sewed the excess seam to the lining as opposed to the fabric, because if you sew it to the fabric you would see it on the right side, right? So yeah, so that's what an understitch is. So this part is completely optional, but because my lining is really slippery, I went ahead and clipped the sides together so that I can run the entire fabric through my overlocker to, just so it doesn't move. You can always do a zigzag stitch if you want, or like a basting stitch around. And then after I did that, I overlocked the sides. I also went ahead and closed the side seams together and overlocked the raw edges as well, just so I get a really neat edge. And then I went ahead and measured the amount of zipper I will need and sewed a straight stitch along the back of my bodice. And then I sewed a straight basting stitch along the bodies, back bodies, so that I can open it up just a little bit like that and place my zipper right smack in the center of that line, pin it down, and then sew the zipper in place before ripping open the basting stitch. Now this is like the easiest way to sew a zipper, but if you know a more difficult way to sew or an easier way to sew, however it is that you sew a zipper, you do you. I'm just basically teaching you how I did the high neck, and how, you know, you'll see how the neck comes together in the end. It's actually really not difficult at all. Okay, so we're almost coming to an end. I folded the bottom in once on its side and then another time, and kind of went over it with an iron really nicely, and then sewed the sides, the bottom edge for the back and the front bodies. And as for the side seams, right, I folded it twice on itself, like so, and then ironed it, gave it a good iron. But when you stitch it under the sewing machine, you kind of have to go over where the two corners of the two ends of the front and back body splits, because if you don't sew that corner really nicely, if you don't give it a good tacking, it will come apart. Like your blouse would tear open if someone pulled you or anything like that, and then there is like there is no way to fix it, because it would rip. Your blouse would rip. So make sure you tack this part really, really well. This part's really important. And voila, all done. This is the final reveal of the neck, and you know what, it's really not hard to sew. Thank you so much for watching, guys. And as you can see here, I didn't actually finish the arms on the sides, because I don't think I kind of want to finish it now. Like, I'm not in a hurry to wear this top, so I might finish it a bit later on, but that's the reality of sewing and how you do things. But again, I'd like to thank all my viewers for being here and supporting me all this time, and I will be up with another video next week. This is my promise to you. Keep watching, and until then, I will see you again. Goodbye. Thank you. Love you.